Hi, I'm doing another video. I'm still babysitting. She's still sleeping. This is kind of a direct response to my last video. I talked about how there's two very drastic different ways to take some of the symbolism in Goblin Market, and that got me to think about some things that I'm reading in my other classes. I don't usually get to compare my other English classes because it wouldn't be fair. Not all the students, know the same material that I'm doing in the other classes. But since this is like a free space to talk about whatever, I'm gonna just explain how Goblin Market makes me think about some of the stuff that I was reading in my other classes. So I will be talking about Dawn by Octavia Butler and a June Jordan poem that I cannot remember the name of. What's crazy is that they were all published in really different times. Goblin Market was in 1859, and Dawn by Octavia Butler was in 1987. And the June Jordan one, since I don't know the name of it, I don't know, but I think it was more recent, like in the 2000s. Not sure. If not, then also late 1900s, not as early as Goblin Market at all. So what I was just going to talk about is the use of metaphor in all three of them. All three of these pieces use deep metaphors to talk about pretty important, drastic things. And if you really didn't know much about it and you were just reading these pieces without any deep thought or analysis into them, you wouldn't really get what they're really about. We talked about how Goblin Market was like a children's story, and it wasn't used to share the message that we get from it now. If people would have read it at that time, they really wouldn't have realized that it was about sex work and the problems with it. And Dawn by Octavia Butler, I'm probably going to butcher a summary of this because it's just so much stuff that happens and I wouldn't even know what to make important. But it's a sci-fi novel. At the sci-fi status, it's about these alien race called Oankali, who took humans off of Earth after World War III, which was a nuclear war between the United States and Russia. Again, it's sci-fi. This is not real. I hope you know. And they have the remaining humans that survived World War III, or they took them away so that they would survive. They have them on a spaceship in space, and they were in a suspension system so that they were alive for 250 years, but they only aged 2 years. And so then they wake up. Sorry, I thought the baby woke up. And then they wake up one of the girls named Lilith, and they train her, they observe her for 2 years, and she gets pretty comfortable with the alien race. Then they give her the task of waking up 40 other people that are in what they call suspended animation, which is the thing that's keeping them alive for 250 years. And she has to basically assimilate them into the fact that they're on a spaceship and explain to them, the situation, and that they have to learn how to survive in order to be put back down on Earth, where they will recreate the human race. And so she wakes them all up, she trains them, some of them the plan backfires pretty much. It's a trilogy. I didn't read the other two, so I don't know the whole story, how it ends. I don't want to spoil it in case anyone wants to read it, but I do recommend read it. It's really good. I really liked it. But we talked about in my class, and this is a women's literature class, how the whole story is a parallel to either the biblical creation myth or European colonization. And those are two very different things. But if you really think about it, the basis of the storyline is the same. I'm not going to be able to explain this as good as I want to. But we talked about how it is a parallel to the creation myth, or an alternative to the creation myth. The main character is named Lilith. They make biblical references all the time. It's the beginning of Earth a second time. She has the task of recreating the human population on Earth again. There's other like biblical names in the story. There's Peter, there's Joseph, there's a whole bunch. And so we talked about that. How, like, is she given the task of creator, or is someone else the creator and she's, just doing labor for someone else? So that was a conversation we had in class. We also talked about how it was a parallel to European colonization, as I said. They're being controlled by these aliens, and they don't even know it until Lilith explains it to them. And they have the task of, like, you guys go here and do exactly what we want you to do, but we're still in control. Like, you're by, because then towards the end of the story, it's not a big spoil, I'm not going to spoil, they find out that they're going to put them back on Earth like they want, but there's one thing that is going to make them need that alien race forever. I'm just going to spoil it. If you don't want to watch it, skip the next 10 seconds. Basically, because I need to spoil it in order to get my message across. Basically, they can go onto Earth and live and try and survive and recreate civilization. But, okay, this is where you're going to want to skip if you don't want the spoil. They cannot reproduce unless they go back to the aliens, basically. So they can go and survive and recreate civilization, but they can't make babies. So they can't really create a new human race until they go back and rely on the aliens once again. That parallels to European colonization because they needed them for a long period of time before they were able to really exist and survive on their own here in America. That was a long explanation. Then June Jordan poem that I can't think of the name of. I'll try and find the name and I'll put it in a comment or something because it's driving me crazy that I can't think of the name of the poem. But she writes a poem and she talks about rape in several of her poems. And so she makes this whole poem, and it's like, I don't have it in front of me because I can't think of the name of it to find it. She talks about how, and when it reads, it sounds like you're reading about her writing about a rape experience. And she's like, he entered without permission, he took control, he took what wasn't his. So me reading that, I was completely able to read it as about rape. And at the end of the story, at the end of the poem, it turns out that she was discussing someone robbing a car that wasn't theirs. There's a line and it's like, but the owner was nowhere to be found, no one was stopping me. So, like, it read about rape, but if you really, like, after reading that, like, you were jaw-dropped and you had to read the whole poem over again because it's like, is she talking about that or is she talking about a car robbery? And what we talked about in class was how she was trying to explain how rape is stealing something that isn't yours and how people weren't understanding that at the time. And so she's making this whole metaphor, and for people that don't understand rape, which is men, to understand how they understand that stealing a car is wrong because it's not theirs and they don't have permission to do that, but they just found a way to justify rape by saying they didn't stop me, it was just there, no one was watching it. So the whole poem was just like a huge metaphor for how it's the same as stealing. And so what I noticed was that all three of these pieces, Goblin Market, Dawn by Octavia Butler, and the June Jordan poem, which I will get the name of, is they all use really deep metaphors to talk about really big societal issues or even like historical issues with Dawn. And like the metaphors were just, this whole semester has been just like deep metaphors in these texts that I've read. And it's just crazy to see how the fact that we have to go so deep into making like such a deep metaphor about something that should be so obvious, and yeah, that's just been driving me crazy. Not driving me crazy, but I feel like I needed to piece all three together, and this is kind of my only platform to do so. No one was probably going to know what I'm talking about in these two, but you should definitely read book Dawn by Octavia Butler. It's really good. It's sci-fi, but don't be like, oh, it's sci-fi, I'm not reading it. It's more than that. You should read it. That's all. I've been talking for 10 minutes. Oh my god. Bye.